We all love stories about ancient Egypt, and if you're anything like me, you might have an interest in the pharaohs. But while most people know who the likes of Tutankhamun and Ramesses II were, there are probably just as many myths and misconceptions surrounding their lives and deaths. So today, we're separating fact from fiction to explore 3 shocking things that we think we know about the Egyptian pharaohs, but actually don't. Hi, it's me. Welcome back to the channel. Join me as we uncover the secrets of the past and learn about the amazing discoveries that are being made about the ancient world. If you'd like to find out more about the pharaohs and ancient Egypt, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an exciting episode. King Tut's real name was Tutankhaten. The boy king is one of the most famous rulers in history, thanks to the discovery of his tomb by Howard Carter in 1922. But what's known about him might surprise you. Firstly, he wasn't called Tutankhamun, at least not at first. His original name was Tutankhaten, which means living image of Aten. He took the throne when he was only 9 years old, so it seems likely that his advisors changed his name to Tutankhamun, meaning living embodiment of the moon god Ammon, to emphasize his connection with the main god of the Egyptian pantheon. As Amenhotep III had no sons, Tutankhamun's father was probably Smenkhare, also known as the heretic king Akhenaten, who famously tried to introduce a new religion centered around the sun god Aten. Although Tutankhamun reversed this religious policy, he didn't live long enough to complete this task. He died in his late teens, possibly from malaria, and was succeeded by Ai, who had married his sister Ankhesenamun. The boy king's legacy lived on through his wife, though, because according to her, he left behind a son who may have been raised in secret. If this is true, then the royal bloodline continued, and Tutankhamun could have been succeeded by his grandson, perhaps even the famous pharaoh Akhenaten. However, DNA testing has shown that none of the royal mummies are related, which would suggest that any children born to Ankhesenamun were likely stillborn or died in infancy. So this theory remains just that, a theory. Cleopatra was Greek, not Egyptian. Born in 69 BC, Cleopatra was the last active ruler of the Ptolemaic kingdom of Egypt. Her family tree can be traced back to Ptolemy I, who was one of Alexander the Great's generals and founded the dynasty after the empire's collapse following Alexander's death. Because the Ptolemies were Macedonian Greek, not Egyptian, they spoke Greek rather than Egyptian and identified themselves as Greek rather than Egyptian. It's thought that this caused some resentment among the native Egyptians, especially towards Cleopatra, who is often depicted in popular culture as an Egyptian queen. However, she was very much Greek, despite having an Egyptian title, that of the New Kingdom's 18th dynasty. Cleopatra was descended from pharaohs such as Ramesses II and Akhenaten, but this claim is a little dubious. According to the Bible, Ramses II had a son named Onias, who fled to Jerusalem after Ramses murdered all of his brothers. Onias later became high priest of the temple in Jerusalem, which some believe proves that Cleopatra was related to Ramses. However, other historians argue that this claim is unfounded, since there's no archaeological evidence to support it. This theory originated in the 1st century AD from an apocryphal book in the Greek Old Testament known as 2nd Esdras. There's no way of knowing whether Cleopatra was related to Ramesses II, but based on her appearance and the fact that she spoke Egyptian, it's clear that she was at least part Egyptian. The last pharaoh was Pharaoh. Most people believe that Cleopatra, who died in 30 BC, was the last pharaoh of Egypt, but she wasn't. In fact, there's a good chance you've heard of her successor, Caesar Augustus, the first Roman emperor, whose mother was Cleopatra's sister. But while Caesar Augustus technically inherited the throne of Egypt, he never ruled over it. You see, when Cleopatra died, Egypt became a Roman province, which was initially ruled directly by Octavian, who soon became known as Augustus. The seat of government was established in Alexandria, and Egypt was governed by a series of appointed officials for the next 300 years until it was eventually conquered by Arab armies in the mid-7th century AD. But there's evidence that the Egyptians didn't accept these officials as their rightful rulers, instead continuing to refer to them as foreigners. So who was the last true pharaoh of Egypt? That would be Pharaoh, a local official who rebelled against Rome in 132 AD and declared himself pharaoh. Very little is known about Pharaoh and his brief revolt, but he's the last person to hold the title pharaoh. Unfortunately, he was captured and executed by the Roman army, bringing an end to the last vestige of native Egyptian rule. Did Akhenaten die early? One of the most infamous pharaohs in history is Akhenaten, formerly known as Amenhotep IV. He's often portrayed as an effeminate heretic who abandoned the traditional gods of Egypt in favor of the sun god Aten and moved the empire's capital to Amarna. However, recent research suggests that Akhenaten's story may have been a lot different than previously thought. For starters, many historians think that Akhenaten wasn't as obsessed with the Aten as previously believed. In fact, a recent study of his skull revealed that he likely suffered from a condition called Marfan syndrome, which can cause the head to become elongated. This would explain why many of the sculptures of the pharaoh show him with a strange, almost feminine appearance. Another recent development comes from DNA testing conducted on the mummy, known as the Elder Lady. Some researchers believe that this mummy belonged to Queen Nefertiti, Akhenaten's chief wife, and the woman depicted in the famous bust in Berlin's Neues Museum. However, the results of this DNA test showed that she wasn't related to Tutankhamun, as previous research had suggested, but instead that she was his grandmother. This suggests that Akhenaten died before Tutankhamun took the throne, and that his son, Smenkhare, who may have been Tutankhamun's father, didn't live long enough to wed his sister, making the idea that Ankhesenamun bore a child in secret highly unlikely. Akhenaten's tomb. Despite ruling Egypt for over 17 years, Akhenaten's final resting place remained unknown until recently. His possible tomb was found in the Valley of the Kings in 2013, hidden behind the tomb of the pharaoh Meremptah. This discovery came after experts used ground-penetrating radar to scan the valley and found a void roughly the size of a burial chamber. However, archaeologists weren't able to enter the tomb because it was full of water. It wasn't until 2015 that they were finally able to drain the water and descend into the tomb. What they found inside shocked them. Contrary to the belief that Akhenaten died before Tutankhamun, the hieroglyphics on the walls depicted both pharaohs. Not only that, but the chamber contained 3 burial couches, suggesting that Akhenaten, Tutankhamun, and another individual who may have been Queen Kia, who was one of Akhenaten's wives, were laid to rest there. So is this really the pharaoh's tomb? While there are still some skeptics, most scholars agree that it is. For one thing, each of the burial couches was inscribed with the same type of hieroglyphics, which indicates that they were made for a single royal family. Also, archaeologists found a small statue of Tutankhamun, which dates back to Akhenaten's reign. It seems likely that the young pharaoh's remains were moved to the tomb after his death, possibly to prevent grave robbers from desecrating them. However, recent studies have shown that none of the mummies found in the tomb belong to either Akhenaten or Tutankhamun. Who the mysterious mummies are has yet to be determined. What do you think? Do you believe that Akhenaten's obsession with the Aten was genuine, or did he simply suffer from Marfan syndrome? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And while you're down there, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay up to date on all our latest episodes. Thanks for watching.